and welcome to the Educated Women Uplifted podcast. I am your host, Debbie LeBlanc, and I am joined by my co-host, Penny Christian. Imagine this. You are the new principal of Elliott Arts Magnet Academy. You've just returned from winter break, hitting the halfway mark of your very first year at the helm when the unthinkable happens. The school you're responsible for catches fire. And I don't mean that figuratively. This is the story of one leader's resilience through the Eaton-Pasadena fire and the journey that followed.
To share that story, we are honored to be joined today by Lanisha McKenzie. With 20 years of experience in education, including 3 years at Elliott's Arts Magnet Academy and 8 years as the assistant principal at Marshall Fundamental Secondary School, Ms. McKenzie is a powerhouse. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from UC Riverside, a Master's in Education Administration, and an Administrative Service credential from Cal State Los Angeles. We are so excited to have her tell her story today. Lanisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start from the beginning. You were born in South Central LA. Can you tell us about what it was like growing up in South Central?
Yes, well, it was growing up in South Central in the 1980s was similar to what you might have imagined. There was a lot of street violence, poverty, and challenges. But to my family, my mother in particular, education was always very important. My grandmother was in education. And so my mom scraped and scrimped and figured out scholarships to enroll me in specific educational programs. I went to Catholic schools. I went to other kind of non-traditional schools, and I had some great schooling experiences. So I think those times made me tough. It made me understand, what privilege and what hardships are, but also embedded me importance of education and helping you to escape and be able to build the kind of life that I wanted for myself.
Lanisha, in our research, it seems one of those places that you went to school was a unique school in Watts.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that school and what it offered to you?
Yes. So the school was called Sheenway Academy, led by a woman named Dolores Sheenway. And she had an innovative idea for schooling that was really holistic. So it was centered and focused on arts. So we learned all types of tradition of dance, from modern to ballet to jazz and African dance. It was kind of centered around the African American experience, but we also learned karate, and we learned computers, and we farmed and fed chickens. And so that really instilled in me just kind of all the different senses, that kind of experiential learning, and really that a lot of important learning not only comes out of a book or a classroom, but also happens outside of the classroom. So I really do think that experience in those formative primary years really helped shape my own view as an educator and really as a person.
As a teen, you moved from South Central. Where did you go, and what was it like when you got there?
Yeah, so we moved to an area of California called the Inland Empire, meaning away from the beach, kind of more suburban, in an area of like Rialto, Fontana, that area. And there I, struggled to make, friends in that kind of more traditional kind of aspect, but really, again, that importance of education and finding teachers and eventually a friend group that really became my home. And so that experience was almost like the opposite of my formative years in terms of the neighborhood and in terms of the schooling experience. But I was still able to find mentors and advocates that helped me thrive in those school settings as well.
We talked earlier in the introduction about your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. Where did you go for that education, and why did you choose those places? And tell us a little bit about the impact that had on your life.
Yes, so I went to UC Riverside, go Highlanders, which is also in the Inland Empire. It's one of the smaller UC schools, but I found it to be a perfect fit for me. You know, I kind of always said I wanted to be far enough away from home that my mom couldn't drop in on me, but also close enough that I could get home and do my laundry if I needed to. So that was the perfect fit. And there I got a great education in history. I was really impacted by my own high school teacher, Mr. Mila, who I remember my first experience in advanced placement U.S. history. I just loved it. I loved his storytelling, and he inspired me to pursue a degree in history. My first year after graduating, I worked a series of temp jobs. I think I worked in the office. I worked like in a medical center, and I was quite frankly bored. I don't like sitting in one space for too long. And one day while I was sitting there, probably supposed to do some work, I was looking at ads and I saw something about becoming a substitute teacher. So I tried substitute teaching, and I subbed in everything from kindergarten to high school to alternative schools. But I really found things click when I was working in a special education classroom. It was a high school classroom, and there were students who had some extensive support needs, who were nonverbal, immobile. And there was one student who I remember was lunch, and I don't know, I was kind of close to him. I don't know if I was feeding or reading a story, but I had on a string of pearls, and I was close enough that even though he was nonverbal and didn't move, he grabbed onto my pearl necklace. And I remember, you know, being like, oh no, please let go, please let go. And then I looked him in the eye and I said, you need to let go of my necklace. Boom. He let go. And I said, you know what? I can do this work.
Yes.
So, you know, I was able to just connect with students and really felt my purpose there. It was good for my energy level. As you guys know, in classrooms, there's almost never a moment that you're sitting down. So from there, I then got my teaching credential from UC Riverside. I started teaching. I think I went on my first job hunt, or what is it, job fair. I don't know, about 2003, 2002, 2003. Did one interview with Pasadena Unified School District, and I've been there ever since. And then it was a couple of years later that I got my master's degree when I was already teaching.
That's wonderful. I am a former history teacher, so I am thrilled that you loved history. Thank you.
I still do.
Good. You had a long journey from the classroom to principal. What was the turning point that made you realize leadership was your path?
So, you know, it was really my colleagues, other veteran teachers, who really, I think, saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. I always said I was perfectly happy in the classroom. Again, I was able to be able to participate in some experiential learning. Here in California, we have something called the California Partnership Academies that kind of connects college and career readiness. So the idea is that there is career technical education combined with the traditional content areas. So students would choose to be in a, what we call academy, where in addition to the classes that they need for graduation and or college entrance, they would also get education specific to a career. So I worked in an engineering and environmental science academy. And so I got to do awesome, amazing projects. I got to learn about engineering and science as a history teacher, which was a little daunting at first. And then eventually I was asked by some teachers to become the lead teacher of that academy. And it was kind of like who wants to do it? Everybody stepped back, and the person that didn't step back was it. And so that was me. The same thing kind of happened. I became the union representative, which I don't think I knew what I was getting into. I think I just nobody wanted to do it. And I said, okay, I guess I'll do it. And then eventually those same teacher mentors said you need to think about moving outside of the classroom. And I didn't necessarily feel like I was ready, but I applied for a teacher on special assignment position
Mhm.
to work with all of the career academies in the district. And so I did, after 12 years in the classroom, transition to that teacher on special assignment role. And I did that for 2 years. And so that was a lot of great fun. I always felt like the teacher from the Magic School Bus, where I would plan a lot of work-based learning trips outside of the classroom learning, field trips to a lot of innovative places, helping connect students with internships, building business partnerships. But I did miss being with students because, teacher on special assignment, I was based out of the district.
Mhm.
I would go to campuses and students wouldn't know my name anymore. I'd be like, but it's me. And so after doing that for a year, I was asked to apply for some assistant principal roles. Somebody found out that I had a administrative credential. I tried to keep that a secret.
Yes.
But then somebody found out I had it and said you should apply. I had a young child, and my son was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 at that time. I said, I don't know if I'm ready. They said, oh, well, you just bring your son with you. And I didn't apply that year, but then I was asked again the next year, and I said, maybe they'll stop asking me, so maybe I should try it. I went on an interview, and when I set foot in the school for that interview, something just clicked, and I said, I think this is the job for me. And then that's when I was assistant principal at Marshall School, which was interesting, a 6th through 12th grade school in the district.
Wow, that is very interesting and certainly inspiring. And what a path that you have taken. So, can you take us to the next step of how did you arrive at Elliott Arts Magnet Academy?
Yes. So again, there were for a couple of years some principalships there that were available. I think again, I always said, I don't know if I could be principal. That's a lot of things. And I'd say like kind of being like boots on the ground. I really enjoyed interacting closely with students and families as well as with teachers. And I kind of felt like the principalship is a little bit more outward facing. And so the first couple of years, some principalships came up. I did not apply. And then one day, and I guess it was November 2023, someone from the district called me and said, would you be interested in a principalship at this wonderful arts middle school? And I immediately said, yeah.
Right.
So after all those years of saying, I don't know if I could do it, the minute that it was presented to me, I accepted. And I served as the interim for the remainder of that year from December 23. I finished the year as interim. I applied and interviewed for the job, and then I became official that would have been July 2024.
Can you take us back to January 7th, 2025? What do you remember most from that day?
Yes, I remember that was the Tuesday that we returned from winter break. It was extremely windy that day, which was extraordinarily windy, but wind days are not uncommon. We've had school closures due to high winds before, with limbs falling and, big trash bins kind of becoming, projectiles and it being so. The district had some emergency meetings for weather alerts and things like that. And so we were planning the end of that day. We'd had some bond measures to pay for renovations on our beautiful campus because we are an arts magnet school. We had beautiful murals and technology and special programming. So we had a costume design studio with sewing machines, and we had just purchased a brand new kiln for our ceramics class. We had state-of-the-art instruments, and we were planning for a ribbon cutting ceremony on a newly designed sports field and newly renovated bathrooms that were open like the last day before we left for spring break or for winter break. But I said, no. Let's not have the kids use them until, we return. So they're fresh and new. Well, at the end of that day, the kids were practicing their speeches for the ribbon cutting. We left a little bit around 5:30, and it was really, really windy. And I remember driving away from the school, which is downhill down Lake Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare through Altadena. And in the top left corner of my rearview mirror, seeing a little spark of orange just in the canyon that looked kind of close. And so I remember just calling the custodial team, because we have night custodians, just saying, stand by and make sure you communicate with me, and, keep an eye out on the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit later, maybe an hour later, you could see on the news and outside the window that the flames were progressing to down the hill to other areas of Altadena close to the school. And then I called the custodians back and I asked them to just evacuate because it was very close to the school. Mm-hmm. They refused. They stayed on campus till I want to say maybe about 8, 9 o'clock. And then, went into a not very good sleep because, of course, the wind was just going. And I was concerned about how the flames might be progressing. I was watching on the news as it was spreading all around the school, the community. If you've ever been to Altadena, it's a pretty tight-knit, small, they don't even call it a city, it's a town. And our school was right in the center of that town. So concerned about if the school would be in danger. The city town council person had a student who also goes to our school. She called me at, I want to say maybe 1 o'clock in the morning and said, I'm hearing rumors that the school is on fire. And I kind of asked her what to do. And she said, call the fire department, which I did. I called the fire department and, the 911 line, and they notified me that they would try and get, support to the school. But I also understood, because you could see on the news, that there were a number of, concerns, the number of firefighters available, the number of homes needing support, and the amount of water available to put the fires out. So I knew that the school would not necessarily be a first priority. And woke up in the morning, and the district did have a meeting. And that morning, we were told that the school was intact and was undamaged. But the fires did go on for days. So the fire is still burning. It's still going. At night, the winds pick up more. So it was on that second night, which would have been, I think, the Wednesday night, that the damage did happen. And by the time we woke up on that Thursday morning, the whole north wing of the school, which we called our 6th grade wing, that was also the area where we had our extensive support needs classroom, as well as our very treasured, beautiful theater, which is connected to a tower, a lookout tower. So that was destroyed on that second night. So we thought we made it out safely after the first night, but the second night there was extensive damage. Our music wing did catch fire, but they were able to put it out. However, it was heavily damaged by the water hoses and the water in the roof to put the fire out. That destroyed everything that was inside. So although the whole school was not damaged, I would say 2/3 of the school was.
Lanisha, I can't even imagine the gratitude you felt when you were at the district meeting and they said, the school has been spared and just thank you. And then to turn right around and that very next night or that night to learn that 2/3 of your school had been destroyed. I can't imagine the pain that all of you felt. Can you describe for us, after the shock wore off of everything you're going through, what went through your mind when you said, I need to lead right now?
So the first thing I did was contacted the staff who I knew lived in the area, which was a significant amount, particularly our counselor, who is the heart of our school. You know, it's a middle school. We just have one counselor, so knows all the
Yeah.
students, who also has children who went to our school, who told me a harrowing story about their own escape at the last minute and loss of their home,
Mm.
as well as their neighbors who they worked with to try to put fires out, who were also very active and involved, parents and students at the school who also lost their home. And then kind of making a phone tree between myself and the then assistant principal to get in touch with as much staff as possible. Then we were given directives from the district to be thoughtful about how we communicated to families because there was a lot of unknowns. But I had to say that even with the unknowns, I just have to reach out to my families. So immediately we set up a webinar, a virtual meeting, and just very widely put out the link to everyone who wanted to join. And that was a really special but heartfelt meeting where honestly, I didn't say very much because there were so many unknowns, but just that I am here, your staff is here, and I don't know what will happen next or where we will be, but our school is more than just the building. Our school is our community, and we will be together somewhere.
Wonderful. I've experienced a fire too. I lost my home about 15 years ago. So I don't understand on the scope that you have, but I understand a little bit. What does survival mode look like for a principal? What did you do to click in your mind to say, I'm going to survive?
Think I had to, I noticed that everybody reacts to challenges. Survival mode looks different. I had to become really still and really quiet to become really clear. So I would say I probably took a good day where I was listening and I didn't make any decisions. I just took a lot of input. And then I did just take some time for myself. And then after that, it was just click and all cylinders on. I need to create a list and find out where all my students are. I brought staff together. We created a plan for monetary and resources donations for the people. And then I worked with the district to figure out where is our school going to be. And splitting up and go to other places is not an option. And after that first day of kind of like silence and stillness, then it was like full blast work. And just organizing those three things, taking care of people's physical needs, taking care of people's emotional needs, and then finding a school for us.
Lanisha, that is probably the most profound statement I think I've heard in a very, very, very long time about being still and very quiet. That's something I know I'm going to take away from this conversation so that you could think clearly, and clearly you did do that. Can you describe for us probably what was one of the hardest decisions you had to make during those early days?
Probably the hardest decision I had to make was really pushing back with the district folks who really wanted me to take more time before addressing the community and saying, I really need to make this happen now. And that I would not make any promises or give out false information, but more important that what I said was more important that I am just present to hear and listen. So that take a little bit of courage because, understandably, you want to be really thoughtful about what you're saying and you're putting out to the community. And we worked to make that happen and they did support that. But I really had to say, I need to be there for my school community sooner rather than later. And I think that took place within 3 or 4 days. My timeline may be off because quite honestly, it's all a blur.
Yes.
But and then just listening. I didn't personally lose my home. And so I didn't want to be the type of person who thinks or projects or tries to predict what people need, just letting people tell me what they need rather than make assumptions. And keep in mind that there were people in my community who lost their workplace, lost their home. Their students also lost their school. So it was incredible loss on all levels.
Yes. Okay. You're bringing me to tears over here at Alabama. Has your school reopened?
Yes. So we were closed for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then we opened in a new school. So we are co-located now with another school. And that came with its own set of challenges.
Sure.
Yes. So, middle school students coming together, they're learning how to be together with people who they may not see eye to eye with. So those first couple of months were very, very challenging, but we were able to settle into a place where now we are able to provide virtually. We still don't have our kiln and we still don't have our costume shop. But outside of those two things, all of the programs that we had at our former school, we now have again. And our enrollment is growing again. So that's quite a feat that in spite of everything, in spite of the fact that we don't have our own school, families are continuing to want to send their children to us because we have an incredible arts program.
Wow, that sounds really very interesting. So how did you personally cope while still showing up as a leader for everyone else? You talked about being there for your families. You talked about taking care of them emotionally, their children, worrying about them. Who worried about Lanisha? How'd you do it?
Well, yeah, I have a great family. I also think it's important that people take care of themselves. So I do take care of my own mental health. I have therapy as well. I love to sleep.
Which is rare when you're an administrator.
I know. Well, you just go to bed early and you wake up early, right? And I do like to travel. So when I am not at work, I'm usually on vacation somewhere. I love water. So it can be a pond, it could be a fountain, it could be a hot bath, it could be a spa, or it could be the beach. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I usually find I love a hot bath and a good book. And that is my method of self-care.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, did you ever doubt yourself? Did you ever think, I can't do this? I just can't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's some people that say they're night owls. I really am like the opposite. I really love the sun and the daylight. So there's something at night I can feel kind of down and sad and I don't know, but something happens to me when the sun comes up. And it feels like Annie, but when the sun comes out, something about me feels like a new chance, and I usually feel better when there's a new day
Yes.
at dawn.
Yes.
Your students obviously went through such a major situation. I don't even know how to describe it. I know I have words of my own, but I don't want to put those words in your mouth. But what changes did you see in your students after the fire, academically and emotionally?
Yeah, so I do equate it a little bit to COVID, but maybe a little bit worse because COVID was kind of worldwide, nationwide, but this was just our little city. And I found that either kids got what they need or they didn't, right? Like I felt in COVID, like if you needed to be in person and you were able to get in person, you did, right? If you were able to make it work, online learning. So I noticed that kids either got what they needed to be able to get through or they didn't. I feel like that was a similar thing during the fires, right? So students, some students had difficulties getting to school because they had to be displaced and so far away that they couldn't make it to our school. So they had to find another school, or, financial wise, economic wise, your economic condition before any traumatic event affects your ability to recover from that. So the students and families who were struggling before the event had even more of a hard time recovering. So it felt like, either kids were able to have the resources to be able to recover more quickly and easier. And there are some families who are obviously still struggling to recover financially, emotionally, get whatever it is that they need and get those resources. I also say that I do feel like this particular tragedy with the fire and the loss of like property affected the adults almost a little bit more than the kids, right? I think a lot of the teachers, the staff, myself, I had to make sure I was taking care of myself, right? Because us adults, we're the caregivers. We're the ones that have to figure out a place to live, a resource, how we're going to eat. So I did feel like the adults, the parents, the staff members struggled a little bit more, right, with that loss. Um, and so it was really, as a leader for me and as a school leader, it was really having to deal with not only the students' social emotional needs, but a lot of social emotional needs for adults as well. And I'm going to include myself in there. I really had to make sure that I could take care of my own self and make sure that I was at a, state where I was in the emotional capacity to deal with, other people.
Mhm, mhm.
This experience revealed something about your community, your school. What did it reveal to you that you hadn't seen before?
Well, I think it highlighted things that I felt before.
Okay.
Number one, it really highlighted the power of art and how important it is to healing, to self-expression, to overall education. Like, sometimes we think like sports and arts, the extracurriculars are just that extra, but it really showed to me how important it really is to healing into the whole child, into the emotional well-being. So a lot of it was drawing and singing and making music and performing. And that I think helped get a lot of the students through, and probably a lot of the teachers who probably teach here because they love the arts. But it really taught me the importance of art as a tool for healing.
You're still waiting for full demolition and rebuilding. What
Yes.
has that process and uncertainty been like for you? And I guess in the
That has
community. And
that has been a lot because the last well, the whole time, there's always that doubt because, financial situations being what it is in the state of California and in education, there's always a question about if it's really going to happen. Um, I have heard from my district that there still is a commitment to making it happen. And so I don't know. I always have hope. I have this saying like everything works out in the end. And if it's not worked out, it's just not the end yet. So it's not the end yet. I have great faith that it'll happen. I understand that it'll probably happen in a timeline. Like, I don't know if you've ever had construction on a house. I said, whatever time they say, triple it.
Mm-hmm.
So right now they're saying 2 to 3 years. So in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe 5 years.
How do you keep the momentum and morale up over such a long period of time?
I just love what I do. I love
I can
kids. I love education. You know, I always say it's the best, hardest job I've ever done.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the energy comes from. Like I said, I go to sleep early. So I get that sleep in.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I might be tired, but something happens the minute I set foot on the campus, and I don't know, the energy just comes.
What does coming back stronger mean for the Elliott Arts Magnet School?
It means continuing our wonderful arts programs, continuing to put on amazing performances, and continuing to learn and grow academically. We really are focused on, you know, that same college and career readiness, right? It's middle school, but how can we prepare students in middle school for high school and get them thinking about what they're going to do after high school, right? Really focusing on reading and writing, and also like that numeracy. So literacy, numeracy, and arts to express yourself.
If you could give someone some advice that's going to experience an unexpected crisis, what advice would you give them?
I think just to listen and then be still and let the answers come to you, because they are within you. And if you don't know, that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Take the time and eventually the answers will come.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. You have shared such a powerful story. You brought me to tears many times, and then you made me smile in the same moment. I admire you for what you do. I admire you for being a middle school principal altogether. And thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome so much. Thank you for sharing. I think this might be the first time I got through the story without crying.
That's
The
okay.
tears
I
were
did it for
coming.
you.
I
Lanisha-
always say I don't let people cry by themselves. So it's a good thing
No.
I didn't see. I would have joined you.
Lanisha, thank you so very much for sharing your story with us. You gave us many, many moments of powerful messages of perseverance, tenacity, kindness, energy. We know that many individuals who will listen to this story will be inspired and surely will share it with all their friends. And we can't thank you for taking time from your tremendously busy April schedule to speak with us. Thank you again for everything, and may the rest of the school year be even better than anything you've ever experienced. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.